Hello YouTube. Today I'll be showing you how to show and hide display or form elements using JavaScript. Now let's start off in our HTML editor. Here I'm using Komodo. It's a free open source editor. If you get Komodo Edit, there's also the Komodo IDE that is a trial or pay for. But today we'll be using Komodo Edit because that works just fine for HTML5 editing. So let's go to File, let's create a new file from template, and I like just to create an HTML5 document. So we'll hit open, and here we have our simple HTML document. Let's call this show hide with JS. And here we have the body of our HTML document. So let's start off building our form. So in order to create an HTML form, we have to first open our form tags, and we'll set its action, or when its method is sent, it's going to go to this URL. So we're just going to have it do nothing currently, and it automatically closes off our form tag. So now let's create an input box. So what we'll do is we'll have an input of type text. Sorry, checkbox, because we're going to have a checkbox that allows us to click the checkbox, and then it'll show and hide the rest of our form, just like you would have a certain form that would only show certain data fields. So now if we go ahead, and it'll prompt to save this, so I'll just go ahead and save it on my desktop. We'll save it right here, and we'll preview this. And this is Komodo just asking, and here we have our checkbox. Now it doesn't do anything currently because we haven't linked it to anything. So let's also set up some other things like the name. Let's set this equal to check, and the ID set to check. Now with this input box we might want some description text, so what we're going to do is create a label, and we're going to use the for attribute to set it equal to CHK, which is our checkbox, and it has to be the ID. So if this name can be something different here, let's name it checkbox, it'll still link because it has to link to the ID. Now let's close our label, and let's say click to show or hide. And let's view this. And here we can see when we hover over our label, it automatically gives us this checkbox hover effect. That way you can hover over it and click it just fine. Okay, so now that we have that down, let's actually write the rest of our form. So what we'll need is a new line. So we're just going to create a new line here, and we'll make an input form. So we'll just make this a simple name and email form. So we'll do type of text and name, and then let's give it a class called hidden, and we'll close off the rest of this here. Close those off just that way, and then we'll have a label. And this can just say something like name. It doesn't have to have the for attribute because it'll be something simple. We'll create another break and another label, so we can go ahead and copy this. And we'll just say email here, name, email, and the same class. So let's view. And now we can see underneath our checkbox we have our name and email input boxes. So what we want to have using these classes, we're going to have our class set to display of none. That way they won't be displayed. So up here in our head, we're going to create some simple CSS. So we'll open the style braces and we'll call this .hidden. And .hidden's our selector. It'll select that class, and we'll say display none. Now when you view this, our input boxes have gone away. However, our labels have not, so let's just add these to the hidden class real quick. And we can copy and paste this into the label. And now our labels are gone. So that's working out just fine. And what we're going to use is JavaScript to toggle between this being display of block and this being display of none. So now what JavaScript does is allow us to use events to trigger JavaScript code. So on the specific event of onClick, we're going to call some code called show hide. And actually, that H should be capitalized. And now let's create our JavaScript. So up here, we're going to create a script of type text JavaScript. Just close off that. And now we want to define a function called, just like we have here, show hide. And it'll take no parameters. That's what the parentheses, inside the parentheses would be our parameters, but we are sending none. And in our show hide, what we're going to have to do is define two variables. So variable one will be our checkbox, and that'll be equal to our document, so our current page, dot get element by ID. And this is why we defined that ID earlier, this ID of check. We're just going to go ahead and put in some quotations and paste that in. So now that'll define our checkbox. And we'll do another variable of hidden inputs, and that'll be equal to document dot get elements by class name. And then, just as before, it will be hidden in here, because that's our class right here. So now let's have an if statement. So we'll have an if. And what we're going to check is we're going to see if that checkbox is checked. So if checkbox dot checked. So if that's true, because this is the same as putting true, so you can just leave out the true part, and then we'll open our brace, and we're going to say that hidden inputs dot. Now what we have to have here is our hidden inputs variable. That's actually an array created because we can have multiple elements using that class name. So what we're going to have to do is iterate through that array. So what we could even do is have our for loop defined right here. So let's have our for loop instead here. Open it up, and for will run while condition is true. So let's create a variable called I. We'll set that equal to 0. And we'll run while I is not equal to hidden inputs dot length. And length is how many items in that array. And then I will iterate by 1 each iteration. So now we can have our if statement. So let's see if checkbox dot checked. So if that's true, then it's going to take our hidden inputs dot style, with our I iterator in there, because that'll select that element in that array, dot style dot display, and then that will be equal to block. So that will set our hidden inputs, and it'll basically come up into our CSS here, and it'll set our display equal to block from none. So we can go ahead and test this right now. So when you click it, you can then see that its display property is set to block. So now the thing is, if we go back and preview that, we click it and then we uncheck it, we can see that when we uncheck it, the stuff doesn't go away. So that could be quite problematic. So what we also need is an else, and we're going to do hidden inputs with our I again, dot style dot display equal to none. And now when we run this, we can see that when we click it once it displays, and then when we click it again it goes away. That's because it's also running this if it's already checked. And just as forewarning, we can change this display here so it shows up as different things. Inline would probably look the best. There's block is also another one that'll work. But this is how you show and hide form elements using JavaScript and a couple of if statements. So if you like this video, please rate, comment, or subscribe. Thank you, and I'll see you guys later.